Teachers of Reddit, what is the most ridiculous excuse for unfinished homework that you've ever heard? A kid, high school, claimed that he couldn't do his homework because his grandmother wouldn't give him back his textbook, which she had taken in retaliation for his theft of her wooden leg. The fifth time the same student said he lost his homework running from a dog that was chasing him on the way home. I've got the opposite story. A teacher lost my homework he marked as he left it in his shed and it got eaten by slugs. He did show me the slug-eaten paper, and gave me full marks for it, so it wasn't all bad. Lately it's always I couldn't access the file, or my personal favorite, the student-facing interface, was acting up like okay, but you have my email, I have a no questions asked extension policy for every assignment, and I assigned this to you 5 days ago. The student claimed he put it in a room in his house. He then forgot the room existed. He was at a loss to explain where his homework was. He was upset to think he must have imagined doing it. He apologized to me. The next week, to his amazement, he found the room, and more amazingly, he found his homework. He handed it in that week. Now this may seem like nonsense, but it turns out he had an operation to remove a tumor from his brain when he was 10. One of the outcomes was a strange side effect that for a short period he could utterly forget a room or more in his house. True story. Confirmed from his mother and sister. Been a teacher for 2 months, with a lot of submissions being online due to COVID protocol. I've had the following exchange with many students. Hey, why didn't you submit the online homework I set? I emailed it to you, it must have not come through, that's unfortunate. Would you mind emailing it to me again before the end of the day? I can't, I didn't save the work. If you didn't save your file, how did you try to email it to me in the first place? No error, I meant I deleted the file after I completed the work. I didn't think I would need it anymore. Well, in the future avoid doing that, at least until you have confirmation that I have it. Either way, you should be able to find it in your sent mail. Assuming you attached it, should still be there. Visibly panicking error. I deleted my sent emails too. Wow, you're incredibly efficient. Well, unfortunately I can't grade you on your work unless I receive it. Seeing as you've already done it before, at least doing it a second time should be a breeze. Rinse and repeat. I'm a dude in my 20s, first year out of uni. Do they really think I'm that technologically dense? I was a TA during uni. They sent me an email, sorry, computer is broken, I'll need an extension. This was early 2000s, so where were they emailing from? If it was the computer lab, well then, that's where they could do the assignment. But more than that, they were on my ICQ. I let students add me for extra help, so I saw them online pretty much all weekend. I mean, if their computer worked well enough for that and to look at pictures of kitties, how could they not complete their work? I did the homework the day you gave it to us, which is 1 week ago, except that I did in an old rough copy of mine, and yesterday when I got back from school, Dad sold all of our old stationaries for petty cash. I was so mad at my dad, I didn't do my homework to teach him a lesson. Could you please call home and tell him about this? I couldn't help but laugh. XD. Taught instrumental music down in South Texas, so I basically never game any sort of homework outside of practicing. 6th grade. Gave the kiddos a super basic theory sheet to complete that was due back in 2 days since I had a dentist appointment the next day. When I'm collecting the sheets, a trombone kid tells me my grandma stole my homework in Mexico and wouldn't give it back. Turns out they were visiting his grandparents over the border outside Matamoros, and his grandma really wanted something of his to hang on her refrigerator, so she took the homework he had just finished and put it up. Kid protested, but she wouldn't relent, so he snapped a pic as proof. Graded the sheet from the picture. Kid got an A. I got a story. My senior year in high school, I was doing a project with another kid in my class. The day it was due, he was walking to school with it and he got hit by a car and died. It was terribly sad and it was big news. The next day the teacher asked where my project board was and I tell him the kid was carrying it when he died. The asshole straight up asked if I knew where it ended up. Sorry teacher, I didn't think to call and ask his grieving mother if she happens to know where the homework of her not even buried yet son is. Like that is on anyone's priority list. Asshole. Not a teacher, but happened in my class. Student was constantly late to first period. Also hardly ever brought in his homework in. One day, teacher asked him why he was late and why no homework. My sister burned down the house this morning. Everyone laughed. The kid got up and left. Turns out, his sister did burn down the house. Left her curling iron on some paper or something. Not a teacher. My little sister ate my homework in the first grade and no one believes me. Not a teacher, but we had a report due and I waited until the last minute like always. I slept through class mostly and one day I was abruptly woken up and asked for my report and I said half asleep, I didn't do it because my mom died. The teacher was disgusted that I would say something so cruel and sent me to the principal's office. The teacher was called into the principal's office after they found out I wasn't joking and was so apologetic. I wasn't trying to be a jerk about it, I was just tired. I ran out of pencil ink. Had a student get badly injured in a terrible car crash. She had to have surgery on her face. Most of us excused her from finals. Some cunt teachers made her come in. Her face was all swollen and her mouth was hanging like she'd had a stroke because she hadn't had the surgery yet. I told her that her surgery was her final for anatomy since she was learning more about practical application of anatomy than I could teach in class. A friend of mine had a dog that tore her homework to pieces. Our teacher only spoke English, which is not our first language, and my friend didn't know how to say tear apart in English, so she instead said my dog ate it. He laughed and didn't believe her. We had never heard the cliché phrase before, I think it's an English thing, so it was all very confusing. Obligatory not a teacher but one of my classmates came with an elaborate story of how he couldn't do his homework because his dad had to leave that night because he was being deployed overseas and that it was short notice, so a lot of helping and packing and blah 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 other stuff had to be done. The dude had it done so well that not only did he manage to waste 10 minutes of the lesson but also convince the teacher enough to even get a thank you to your father for his service to the country. Towards the end of the period, the kid gets a call to the office that his dad is here to pick him up for a doctor's appointment. He had to do the homework 5 times for lying. It was a long-ass homework. I sent it by one of the major express companies, and they told me that the package had been opened and emptied. They checked their security cameras at their hub center, and found nothing. They are just as baffled as I am. I get kids who tell me they were cutting class / came late / slept through / talked through directions so they didn't hear the assignment / know how to do it so they don't have to do it. Not a teacher, and I actually finished my homework. I was in 4th grade, and we were doing a spring cleaning, and emptying our binders of anything from the previous unit. I guess I was being too slow, because my teacher just grabbed my binder, and shook all of its contents out into the garbage. Including my homework. I told my mom what happened, and she told me to just be upfront about it, and to not worry. The next day I went up to my teacher. Instead of collecting our work, she would have us bring it to her, and the conversation went something like this: where's your homework? You threw it out. I threw it out. Yes. She didn't speak to me after that. The new version of this is just uploading a blank document to the online Dropbox and playing dumb. Gee, Professor, I'm not sure why that's blank. How weird. Isn't that weird? Well, here is my paper 2 days after the due date. This is a little off topic, but the question reminded me of this. Back in 2nd grade in the mid-80s for me, I had a mean teacher. One time I didn't do my homework. She asked why and I told her I didn't feel like doing it because I had a headache from listening her talk all day. She gave me a paddling, which was the norm back then. She then asked me if I was going to start doing my homework. I told her no because my butt hurts now. I'm going to have to tend to that when I get home instead of doing homework. It was worth it because it made the class laugh. I taught math and science to a grade 7 class last year. The work a student handed in was not in their own handwriting, so I called the parents. The dad admitted to doing the work for him because my son's going to be in the NHL. He doesn't need to do math and science in grade 7. This kid wasn't even the best player on his rep team. A student told me she had a bad dream about her cousin taking her and her dog on a road trip in a Ferrari. I never quite understood how having a dream about a Ferrari road trip made someone not be able to complete work. Not a teacher, but one of my classmates said that their dog ate their homework. One, she has a cat too. The homework was online. This country has a couple long weekends, but the students want to get a couple more days off on top of it. So on like Tuesdays and Wednesdays before the holiday I start getting messages about people's dead grandmothers. It's never the grandfather. How many fucking grannies are dying out there? I am gonna starting asking for a picture of the body. Not a teacher here, but one of my classmates said that another classmate ate his math homework. The sad part was, it was no excuse. It was the truth. I saw it with my own eyes. But the teacher obviously didn't believe him. I broke my back. As she walked towards my desk, I believe she was going to give a different excuse or at least mention a different body part, but the panic overwhelmed her and she went with her back. Both sadly and hilariously, I couldn't help but give her a "are you dumb" face. Not a teacher but one of my classmates tried. I was mugged on the way to school and they took my bag with all my homework in it. What's that on your shoulder? It appears to be my bag, sir. Detention. So not my story but a good friend of mine's. He got hit by a car on his bicycle when he was 13. Broke a dozen bones and was in a wheelchair for 3 months, plates in wrists, the whole 9 yards. Fast forward 4 years, we were seniors in high school. Who else but the guy who hit him years ago was our history teacher. He didn't do a final report. His excuse: I have a plate and 4 screws in my wrist from being hit by a car. I couldn't type for that long. Fucker got a free pass. When I was a kid I once told my teacher, I forgot to get around to it, to which she immediately scolded me and shouted, you forgot or you didn't get around to it. Which is it? Scared the shit out of kid me. UPS lost the flash drive. This is legit and too ridiculous to be a lie. This was from a parent at the Catholic high school where I taught at the time. Paraphrasing because I can't find the original, which I kept. Please excuse the late homework. Our pet cat defecated on it. And yes, defecated was the word they used. Another one of those, not a teacher but. In 6th grade English class we had to do a listening exercise with a CD. I didn't have a CD player but I had a PS2, but the PS2 couldn't read the disc, so I told that to my teacher and she didn't believe me and tried to prove me wrong by putting the CD into the CD player they have at school. She said, see? The CD does work. I said, I never said the CD doesn't work, I said my PS2 can't read the CD. People laughed at me. I hated that time of my life. Not a teacher but an excuse. I used to have this little Jack Russell named Rocky that would eat absolutely everything it came across. One evening he was chillin' out on the couch next to me, while I was going over an English essay I'd spent hours writing in my workbook. I get up to go to the bathroom, leaving my book on the couch. I get a bit sidetracked, make some food and come back to find my essay covered in dog chunder, soaked all the way through, with a random bolt amongst the mess with no way to salvage it. Next day teacher asks me where my essay is. I tell her my dog ate a bolt and threw up on it. I get kicked out of the lesson for being ridiculous. Life can be tough. Your usual not a teacher, but a guy I know in one of my classes in college finished his work and printed out a 12-page thesis paper that was due the next morning with no excuses. He used a printer from the library. Our class was so early that our school's library was still closed for another hour. He was in culinary, this is important. He came in the next morning, ripped/crumpled up paper in hand. His excuse was his monkey ate his homework. He never mentioned having an exotic pet before after knowing him almost a year, so we, the class, called his bluff. He had baked a loaf of banana bread and accidentally left it in his pack along with his class work. He had a pet monkey that of course smelled the treat, ate the bread, and ruined his work in the process. He took a video of himself stating the time and date of that morning before flipping the camera and showing the monkey having itself a great time shredding the papers. We all watched it on the main screen, had an amazing laugh, and the teacher gave him a 2-hour extension so he could reprint the paper. For those curious, we lived in a state where it was illegal to own a pet monkey unless you moved from another previous state with proper documentation. Yes, he had correct paperwork. It was a Capuchin monkey named Baby Girl. Not a teacher. Sorry. So my friend had forgotten to do the homework over the weekend, so he told our math teacher some bullshit excuse of going bungee jumping. Our teacher joked that she needed proof since she knew he was lying. So that night he sent me pictures of his face and I put it onto some GoPro footage I found on YouTube. Originally I tried to make it look good, but we thought it would be funnier if it was really shit. So the next morning we show it to her in class and she, being the good sport, laughed and excused him from the homework since he put such effort in to avoid doing it. I don't know if ridiculous, but a classmate of mine changed his profile picture on Facebook with a candle on black background, signifying death of a family member, with the caption, "We will miss you, Aunt Laura." Hundreds of people offered their condolences. I messaged him asking what happened and he said it was faked just so our professor would give him a week of extra time to mourn because he hasn't finished an important project yet. 2 months in and the teacher still hasn't found him out on it. Different story, but I have a ridiculous excuse for my high school chemistry teacher not accepting my homework/assignment. She never updated our grades online until maybe 2 to 3 weeks before the final. Then I noticed I had a 0 on something that was /3% of our grade, which was weird cause I did all the assignments, to my knowledge. It was some lab assignment and I looked at the date and was thinking, why wouldn't I have done this assignment? Then I realized it was the day I was getting my driver's license, so I wasn't in class. So I'm like, "Okay, no problem, I'll just talk to her tomorrow and she'll take it off," cause clearly I wasn't there. Nope. Instead she tries to claim that I'm just trying to weasel my way out of the assignment. I'm like, bro, I literally have proof I wasn't here, look at my license. So she's like, okay fine, how about you redo the assignment on your own, and if you get an A on the final I'll give you credit for it. I'm like, KW/E, I get an A on the final, still have a B in the class, so I'm like, maybe she forgot? So I asked her, and she's like, no, I remembered, I graded your assignment, here it is. I look and she had given me 6/20, then cut it in half to 3/20 for being late. And the points she took off weren't even for wrong answers. The one thing I distinctly remember being docked for was multiplying 6**7 equals 42 but not showing my work for the multiplication. I was never the type to tell my parents about a teacher being a dickhead, but this was ridiculous. So I tell my parents, we end up having to meet with the teacher and the principal, and the principal basically just says he can't make a teacher change a grade. What was worse is it was only the first semester, so I still had a whole nother semester with her, which was miserable and awkward. Not a teacher, but when I was in school my elderly geography teacher told us about a boy he went to school with. He didn't do his homework one day and his excuse was the sow gave birth last night. Their teacher wouldn't hear it and caned him for not doing his homework. The next day the boy's father came in a rage to tell off the teacher. Turns out the boy was a farm kid and one of their pigs went into labor and had struggled to give birth that night, so the whole family had to get involved. The teacher was really embarrassed and had to apologize to the kid. Turns out she didn't believe him because she didn't know that so was what you call a female pig. That kid never had to give another excuse to that teacher for not doing his homework for the rest of the year. Not a teacher, but this kid in class literally stood up and said I burned it, and yes, he got detention. Not ridiculous but true and unusual. During the final I came to my English students at Vermilion Community College in 1994, Ely, MN, a student showed up 30 minutes late for the final, huffing and with camos splattered in blood. Mr. X, I just got my buck about a mile from campus and it's out there freshly dressed but not safe. Can I retake the Go, I replied. Congrats. Meat waits for no man, but a final exam, devoid of blood and viscera, will be waiting for you. Bring me some meat. And off he went among a smattering of laughter, and I got a few pounds of ground venison which were delicious. Haha, this brings back some memories. Not a teacher, this was a close friend of mine, my mom chucked it in the bin. Basically her mom is obsessed with cleaning. She hated the slightest bit of clutter. My friend had done her homework and must not have tidied it away clearly enough for her mother, so she threw it away. She only realized the next morning. There she was telling the teacher in class, what could he do? Yell at her mom and give her detention? The parent was involved in the excuse. He was visibly annoyed, but she got off no problems. In case anyone is in dire need of a get out of homework card that guarantees no consequences, here it is. Piano teacher here. Had a young student say his mom went shopping so he couldn't practice. So his mom went shopping all week? Another time during a Zoom lesson, saw a student's dog literally eating her homework. Was funny as heck and luckily already graded. I was a middle school science teacher. My cat ate about 12 different students' homework the first time I took papers home to grade. I had no idea my cat loved paper so much, but I got up the next morning and the stack of papers was shredded. My students thought it was hilarious when I told them, "I'm sorry, my cat ate your homework." Not a teacher, but one of my classmates in 5th grade came to school with a cast and said his homework wasn't done because he broke his arm and was at the hospital all night. He actually broke his dominant arm and she told him that that was no excuse for not completing his homework. A student nonchalantly told me he didn't finish his essay as he was just so busy that weekend because his dad died. My gut told me he was bullshitting me, but I played along expressing my condolences and him told him to take as long as he needed. After class I called his mom and told her I was so sorry for her loss, what a horrible tragedy for her family, etc. And mom was like, "Wait, what? What are you talking about?" I recount to mom how her son told me about how his dad died this weekend and mom is like, "No he didn't, why would my son say such a horrible thing?" Then I played dumb and say in a shocked tone, "Do you think it's because his essay was due today and he wanted to get out of it?" No, he could never do such a thing. Mom said not to worry, that she would handle it. The next morning the kid handed in his essay and asked if I knew all along. I gave him a dramatic "Why, I never," and we both laughed. He ended up with an A as he was a competent writer. Not quite homework, but the most ridiculous excuse for behavior I've ever heard came yesterday. Kid types bitches in chat and claims that he did it by accident because he was trying to answer the question we asked and was starting with the word which. This is doubly ridiculous because we weren't answering in the Zoom chat, we had a separate web app. He had been answering all the previous questions in successfully for the first 35 minutes of class. I pulled him into a one-on-one breakout room and he doubled down on the lie rather than owning up to it. Not a teacher, but I had a classmate who was blind and had a seeing eye dog. One day he told the teacher that his dog ate his homework. He did homework through some braille device thingy, and his dog looked genuinely guilty. She said that's not good enough and the dog promptly vomited up paper with typing on it all over the floor. He got a very quiet sorry and was never asked for his homework in that class for the rest of the year. I went to the Ren Fair with a campus activities group at my college. It was the day before I had a creative writing assignment due, but I was pretty close to done and we were supposed to be back by 7 p.m. plenty of time to finish. Or, you know, it would have been had our bus not gotten struck by lightning. We were about 2 hours from campus, so the replacement showed up at 7 and we all got home after 9. I emailed the professor and asked if I could have an extension and thankfully he said yes. I'm going to go the other way with this. I remember in 6th grade a good 80% of the class didn't do a homework assignment. Our teacher went desk by desk asking each of us why. By the time she got to me, every excuse in the book had been used. So I just told the truth, I don't have an excuse. I just didn't do it. I thought maybe she would respect the honesty. Nope. Apparently it was far more disrespectful. Funny related story, I have a sister who is a couple years younger. She ended up having some of the same teachers I'd had, some of whom I had stayed in contact with afterwards. Well, and I was in high school, I ran into my former teacher, her teacher at the time. She mentioned that she got a book report from my sister on a book that was fairly obscure. So obscure, in fact, that the only time the teacher had ever seen somebody read that book was when I had read it. She then told me to tell my sister that if she was going to steal my work, she should make sure to change the date on it, too. Geez, off the top of my head, there was the time one of my 12th graders didn't have a big paper he needed to submit. Rather than embarrass him, I took him aside later in the class and asked him why he didn't have it. He was the type of kid who usually did all of his work on time. He got weirdly shifty, so I took him outside and was just like, "What's the deal?" And he goes, "Well, like, you always say to just be honest, right? Like no guilt trips?" So yeah, I lost my virginity last night, and passed out at her house, and I wasn't allowed to be there, but we both fell asleep, and her dad chased me out today and my backpack is actually still there now. I couldn't decide if this was a weird adolescent humble brag or weird adolescent candor. Either way, he sounded honest to me. I told him to just let me know when he got his stuff back and we'd sort it out. Obligatory. Not a teacher but someone in my Algebra 1 class used the excuse my girl gave me a hickey he got suspended. Not a teacher anymore but I had a student tell me at the beginning of class, Mr. Neacondiment? I didn't finish my homework last night on account of 5 of my family members got blowed up when their house exploded. Also, my cousin got shot and killed. Did you hear about the shooting at X yesterday? That was my cousin. None of this happened, of course, which I confirmed by offering my sympathies to her mother when she came to pick her up. I mean, why did she kill the cousin, too? Leave some family members around, Olivia, you may need another excuse tomorrow. SMH. My son couldn't hand his homework in because a duck flew into our kitchen, panicked and landed on the kitchen table. Despite her panic, the duck spotted some Rice Krispies and started to eat them out of the bowl, splashing milk and cereal all over the homework. Then, the duck grabbed the homework page, I presume 'cause it was covered in cereal, and flew off with it. Not sure the teacher ever believed us. Not a teacher but this kid in my 11th grade English class. Teacher, why didn't you submit your essay last night? Kid, my internet wasn't working. I sent you an email about it. Mind you, he sent the email before the due date time. I had a misbehaving dog from age 12 to 16, until she got older and calmed down, and fostered for a dog breed rescue. The dog did eat homework. And once, my math book. But I hated math, so I stood there and said, semi-bad dog, semi-bad dog. Happened just a few days ago. Student told me that the work is too difficult for him to do. The work in question? Handwriting practice exercise. Edit to add, should have been more detailed. This kid has no difficulty finishing the handwriting practice exercise, and he has pretty good handwriting. He finished it in 5 minutes after I told him to complete it in class. He has this habit of saying that the work is too difficult for him to do when he did not finish his work, and this behavior is consistent across subjects. Back in college, I went to the hospital for extreme dehydration. My entire friend group visited me even though I was in and out in the same day, after being pumped full of liquids. That is except for the one friend who used his non-existent visit to me and an excuse to get an extension on his project. He got the extension. When he was done with his project, he gave me a much-needed lift to the laundromat and a good meal. Not a teacher. Some kid said that his computer broke. The assignment was on paper. No, I didn't copy it from the internet. A very recent one. I could not do the homework due 5 minutes ago because I'm emailing you to ask for an extension for the homework that was due Monday. No reason given for the Monday homework, BTW. In February 2001, my dad was going through college. He missed an important test and told the professor that he had just had his first child, a daughter, and that his house burned down on the same night. The professor thought it was utter bullshit. Until he saw it in the newspaper. I'm the daughter. It didn't happen in my memory, obviously. I had just been born, so it's not a thing I think about often, but it's weird knowing my first home burned down the night I was born. Apparently they had a pretty sweet nursery set up for me, as well as a sizable library and a garden, but instead I spent my first weeks in a motel. We also lost 2 cats. Incidentally, this year on my 19th birthday my college had a small fire in one of the building's basements, so I joked about how the universe likes to get me fire for my birthday. I did the homework but it didn't post because I did it on my phone. Is there any way I can turn it in? I know the deadline was 12 p.m. but I thought that was at night. And they are college students. Not a teacher, but I heard a classmate of mine from a couple years back say I spilled tomato ketchup on it. Believable at first. Until you learn that the kid's whole family are allergic to tomatoes. Why in the world would he have ketchup if he's allergic? I had a math workbook that was basically all of our assignments and homework throughout the whole year. We would do the assignments and turn in the workbooks to be graded, and get them back. I hated math. I went on a camping trip with the Boy Scouts after we finished all the work in that stupid workbook for the year, and I gleefully tossed my completed workbook into a fire, let it burn up for a few seconds, then fished its charred remains out before it was completely destroyed, stuck it in a Ziploc bag as some kind of keepsake. Anyway, we get back to school on Monday for the last week before summer break, and the math teacher announces that we all need to turn in our completed workbooks for a final grade on them. My classmates who were on the camping trip with me immediately looked at me, because they knew what happened to my workbook. Anyway, I ended up handing the teacher the clear plastic bag with the still identifiable remains of my workbook. I probably explained that I hadn't known we would need to turn it in again. I don't remember what specifically happened with it, but I didn't get it trouble. This is the moment I lost faith in my students. I'm an English teacher from Venezuela. I used to work at an institute where many teachers were about the same age as the students, 19 to 25 years old, so it was common to get acquainted to some of them. Once I had this female student who was friends with another girl I knew, but I noticed from the beginning that the girl didn't want to do anything in class despite my best efforts. At that time, I was inexperienced and I thought maybe I should talk to her friend to get her to do more in class and help her out. The last day of class comes and I see the student coming to me with her mom, and suddenly the mom tells me that she knows I've been harassing her daughter and telling her she was going to fail. It turns out that our mutual friend had made it seem like I was threatening to fail the student if she didn't go out with me or something like that. That was the moment I decided not to trust any of my students and took me a while to trust again. Similar story. In 6th grade social studies, we had to make primitive tools, aka everyone made weapons because it was the 1999/2000 school year. I made a short spear using a rock and a stick. You weren't supposed to use modern materials, but my dad helped me and had me tape the rock in place. Anyway, day to turn them in comes and the teacher's out that day. Fine. We throw all our weapons in a pile in the corner of the classroom and we'll present tomorrow. Tomorrow comes and our teacher is pissed at the class. See, the corner we threw our weapons was also home to a trash can. The janitor assumed our weapons were junk and trashed them. The majority of the class had to explain what their weapon was in great detail. I had this lady in my class who was always turning things late, missing classes, underperforming in general. She said she had a very demanding job. She was older, so I thought I would cut her some slack. My co-workers appeared to be very strict with her. At the beginning, I was uncomfortable with that, but she had so many piling excuses. Like I had this work thing and then I got sick and my mother died from the same sickness this week. No joke, she killed her parents 3 times that semester. The last straw was when she told me she had written and exams and doctors and her grandma dying for that day. Then I saw her Facebook pictures by the beach. She was telling me all this in the Facebook chat. Needless to say, I didn't fall for it anymore. My cat gave birth on my homework proceeds to share picture of a whole litter of slimy kittens on a pile of sheets. My older son told his band teacher he couldn't practice at home very much because his saxophone playing scared his baby brother. Whenever we had an online file to be uploaded I would copy .mp3 files, change the extension to .doc, or whatever word used in 2008, and submit it. Obviously trying to open MP3 as a Word document didn't work and it made it look corrupted. I would usually get an extension. Not a teacher that accepts homework, but I remember once my parents coming home from conferences for my sister pissed off. You know the times just them walking in the door throws off an era of I think I'll go to my room now feelings? Yeah, this was one of those times. Turns out, all my sister's teachers said she never turned in homework. But my parents knew she did it every night. They go to her locker, open it up, and out falls their words, not mine, avalanche of completed homework papers. She was doing them, and not turning them in. One that is not uncommon at all. I just found out there was homework, so I had not time to do it. My wife teaches high school kids. She tells me so many stories about how smart the dumb kids think they are. One student tried to say he didn't get a project done because his grandma was real sick and he was too busy helping her. Too bad for him, his younger brother was in the class with him and not willing to go with the lie. Not a teacher, had a run-in with a TA in a chemistry class. Had a very long lab going on for a microchemistry class. Was in the final stages of a multi-week experiment and had my samples in a hot water bath. There were 5 glass vials with precipitate in them, all boiling for several hours. For some reason, my Ta decided to take a look at one of the vials. She grabbed the small glass vial from the boiling water and was shocked to learn the glass was hot. She flung the vial halfway across the room as it burned her fingers. The vial shattered and the sample was lost. I asked her what she expected to happen and she wandered off to take care of her burnt fingers. Completed my lab work, noted one sample was destroyed during the process. She took 20% off the top of the grade for only having 4 of 5 samples. Had to go to the professor and explain what happened. She denied the whole thing, but he remembered seeing her with burnt fingers. Fun times.